Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. A plastics plant in Sarnia that's been the center of controversy says it's going to close. The plant has been shut down since April after concerns of benzene. Plus, an update tonight on the potential job action by Canada Border Services Agency workers. And our latest Rose City Rewind episode takes a look back at when police got more serious about drunk drivers. We begin with a plastic plant in Sarnia saying it will permanently shut down. It comes after increasing pressure from the government to cut back toxic emissions. That's after members of a nearby Indigenous community said the plant was making them sick. CBC's Chris Ensing joins me now. Chris, what are the people of Aamjiwnaang saying today?
Meg, they're saying that it feels like a breath of fresh air. This is the latest in a months-long battle between one of the world's largest chemical producers and a community of about 900 people. This video shows you how close these two places are. The chemical plant producing material that's used in manufacturing plastic parts for the automotive and medical industry. It does that by processing a chemical that's called benzene. Neighboring Aamjiwnaang First Nation says the facility has been emitting dangerous levels of the chemical, which is known to cause cancer with long-term exposure to high amounts. So both the provincial and federal governments have ordered the company to fix those leaks. The plant has been shut down for weeks, and now the company says that they're going to shut it down permanently before June of 2026.
Chris, what is the company saying about why it's deciding to shut down?
Meg, the company says that this is not about what's required to restart operations by both the provincial and federal governments. They do estimate that that could cost up to $50 million and take about 6 months. But they're saying that the plant is no longer economically viable. I asked for an interview, but have not gotten a response. This company hasn't done an interview since the issue started in April. But here's a few lines from their press release about this anticipated closure. The company saying that it needs to make large investments unrelated to restarting the plant, and that those would be economically impractical given today's challenging industrial environment. The company said that the long-term prospects have worsened. It's no longer a viable asset. Now, this will put 80 people out of a job and 500 indirect jobs will be affected.
Chris, obviously the Aamjiwnaang have had concerns about this for a long time. Is this the result the chief and council were hoping for?
No, Meg. We spoke with two councillors today and we asked them specifically if this was what they wanted to see. And people in Aamjiwnaang, they work in the industry and they understand its value. Council says that they've been pushing for 6 years to get emissions lowered, saying that was the goal, to keep people healthy. These orders from the province, they cut back targets on emissions by about 90%. And it was a move welcomed by Aamjiwnaang chief and council. The feelings people are describing today, it's not celebration, it's about relief.
I was shocked. We did not know this. We speak with them pretty regularly, but I could understand that perhaps they wanted to communicate that with their staff before they communicated that with us, so I understand that. But I was shocked because we didn't know that this was coming.
There is a sense that this isn't the last of the facility. Oil refineries are now shipping benzene to storage plants or processing facilities by rail, road, and ships. Sarnia's mayor says that's a concern, but companies have proved they can do it safely. He sees this as a move by the company to force the government to ease up on those standards.
I suspect to some degree there's some gamemanship going on here, saying we're going to the nuclear option, which is shutting down, solve our problem. But the reality is they had the option of appealing it, which they were starting to do, which was to argue the science. This should not be a political discussion. This should be a science discussion about people's health.
Now, I asked Ontario's Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks what she thought about this closure. Her office sent me a 2-line statement saying that the ministry will continue to prioritize health and safety as the company determines their next steps. The company, meanwhile, says that they'll work towards a permanent closure in a safe, responsible, and compliant manner. Meg?
Thanks so much for that, Chris. That's the CBC's Chris Ensing reporting. A tentative agreement has been reached for Canada Border Services Agency workers, averting what could have been potential job action later this week. The CBC's Dale Mullner brings us the latest.
Members of the union representing border officers and other CBSA staff have been at the negotiating table with a mediator since last Monday. Today they announced they've reached an agreement after working around the clock to get a deal. The more than 9,000 workers have been without a contract for 2 years. Their main issues have been wages, retirement benefits, and job security. National Union President Mark Weber says in a statement, "I'm proud of the solidarity our members have shown over that past 2 years of negotiations." Treasury Board President Anita Anand also stated today this tentative agreement demonstrates that the best agreements are always reached at the bargaining table. The news comes as welcome relief to business leaders and others who depend on the border crossings. Windsor-Tecumseh MP Eric Kuzmerchuk says the agreement is a fair deal, and he says his government will be watching the ratification vote closely.
This is a tremendous relief because we know how important the free flow of services and goods and people are across that border. It's absolutely vital. $400 million of goods pass across that border every single day. We know it's absolutely vital for the tourism sector. And we know that it's absolutely critical as well to, the thousands of Canadians, nurses and engineers that work across the border as well, too. So, this is good news, very welcome news.
The union won't release details of the agreement until Thursday. That's when the members will receive a ratification package with details of the contract. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
More than 3 years after shutting down roughly half of its youth detention centers, Ontario is seeing overcrowding at its remaining publicly run facilities. In 2021, the province closed 26 centers. Today, there are 20 privately run facilities and 5 public. At times, those facilities average more than 100% capacity. The centers house youth charged or incarcerated in violent crimes like murder, armed robbery, and burglary. Some young people are sent out of their community to a detention center.
That's what's problematic, right? We used to have, like I said, our New Beginnings facility here in southwestern Ontario in Windsor, Essex County. So when you have a young person that gets in trouble, and just say mom or dad, their first language isn't English, they're not familiar with the Canadian judicial system or criminal justice system, and they're told, okay, well, your child is in Hamilton in a facility, or your child is in Brampton in a facility, or in Simcoe. If they don't have the financial means to get there to see their child, it can create a significant amount of stress and distress for the family. And they don't really have system navigators. I mean, as a lawyer, we do the best we can to guide them through the process, but all of that through a translator is a lot.
I'm not going to lobby or advocate for more facilities or for, to have more youth detention, by no means. But we need to make sure that we have facilities that are close in proximity to people's homes, right? Where young people live, where we do see the highest need, and ensure that they're there and they're available and that there is enough beds for the people that we need.
The Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services tells CBC News in a statement that it monitors the utilization of custody and detention systems. That's to maintain what they call appropriate capacity and respond to changing needs within the youth justice system. Well, 3 people are in hospital with very serious injuries, according to police in Chatham-Kent. Police say a 2-vehicle crash happened on Queen's Line near Merline Road around 9 p.m. yesterday. 1 person was airlifted to London and 2 others were taken by ambulance to hospitals in Windsor and London. 3 others involved in the crash were sent to hospital last night but have been released. Officials say the crash involved 2 women and 5 men, ranging in age from 11 to 47. We've got footage of the moment steel workers on both sides of the Gordie Howe Bridge met in between to exchange handshakes. CBC Windsor's tower camera captured this late yesterday. The shot is several kilometers away, but you can still make out the moment. We can see the beam lowered into place and workers on both sides then bolt it down. After several minutes, an iron worker on the American side and an iron worker on the Canadian side meet up in the middle and shake hands before returning back to their respective sides. We caught up with bridge officials today for an update.
Well, we already have temporary beams already connected to the 2 sides of the bridge to help us with our final alignment. And midweek, we'll actually complete the installation of the closure section. We'll have over a year of work to accomplish after the connections actually made in the center. But this is one of the most visible milestones in the project. A lot of people are going to a little sigh of relief that everything's coming together. We had no doubt from our team standpoint that everything would match up in the middle and we'd accomplish this task from the outset.
It connected yesterday. How were they feeling up there when that happened, even if it's just symbolic at this point?
Well, there's a lot of excitement, a lot of high fives going on each and every day now as we get closer to the permanent beam installation. There will be no more cables installed. This closure segment, it's just to connect the gap at the bridge deck. So all of the cables that you see today that's the permanent installation.
Who were the first two to kind of go across and exchange high fives or handshakes? Was that chosen specifically?
It was the team that actually made the connection. So you'll have to talk to the ironworkers, I guess, from each side that actually did that.
On this day in 1980, the OPP added a new tool to deter people from drinking and driving. Officers started carrying around portable breathalyzers as legislation made it possible for the first time for police to stop any vehicle and require the driver to blow into the machine. This story done by former CBC reporter Kim Christie.
Ontario provincial police officers are now carrying small, inconspicuous brown briefcases with them as they set out on patrol. In it is their new weapon to combat highway fatalities caused by impaired drivers. It's a new style of portable breathalyzer called Alert for alcohol level evaluation roadside tester, and police have increased powers to use it.
Under the new section in the criminal code now that they've just put in recently, we can stop any vehicle. We can require the driver to provide a sample of his breath into this machine. This machine will indicate whether the person has failed the test, whether he is in the classification of receiving a warning, or whether he has no alcohol in his system at all.
It's an offense to refuse to blow into the machine, and if you fail, it's off to the police station for a more accurate breathalyzer test. But police insist the main purpose of Alert is not to nab drunks, but to discourage them.
Do that. It'll act as a deterrent. People will become aware of the fact that this little machine is going to be out on the road, and hopefully if they become aware that way, if they know they're going to go out to a party where there's going to be alcohol served, they'll make other arrangements to get home.
There is already strong evidence indicating the Alert system is a successful deterrent. In one test area, there were 1,600 fewer accidents over a 9-month period. Police admit the portable breathalyzer may not deserve all the credit. Motorists, too, became more alert of the dangers of mixing alcohol with driving.
Lots of sun shining on Windsor, Essex today, about a week away from the official start of summer. We have your full weather forecast coming up after the break. Colette, this weather is doing wonders for the garden I share with my grandpa. We got a bunch of heads of lettuce coming up that we enjoyed last night. We're waiting for the beans.
Sounds good. I'm always like excited when that time of year comes. I know it's a ways, but for tomatoes, fresh tomatoes off the vine.
I love a toasted tomato sandwich. That has to be, when they're warm from the garden and then you bring them inside.
Yes.
Nothing better. Favorite time of the year.
We've got everybody at home, at least those who aren't currently eating, wanting to get to that meal, right? You know, and speaking of our gardens and just even ourselves, right? We do need the moisture, and some extreme heat can make us all kind of wilt a little bit. And so I want to give you a heads up. There are two different things going on, okay? There's the warmth that's coming our way for this week, and, you know, it kind of spikes, and then it's going to drop back closer to seasonal for this time of year. But then we get a resurgence into next week, and this is what this graphic here is about. When we get a warm ridge that's going to build, you see my dates here. This is a 2, 3, maybe even it'll be 4 days into next week, where we're talking about the risk of some extreme heat warnings. We could be getting into record temperatures, and we're not just talking in the low 30s, getting into the mid 30s, and humidex values getting up there beyond that, maybe pushing towards 40. So that's to come next week. Prepare yourself now. But we have some heat coming this week. We're not feeling it today. Today, temperatures below seasonal. Normal daytime high around 25 degrees at this time of year. And look where we're sitting, some high teens or some low 20s. Been very nice, though, to have the sunshine. The breeze, what breeze we've had, has been a little bit cooler. And there is this cold front that is off to the west of us. Now, what I want to point out with this feature is that much of this energy is going to kind of pull to the northeast. So it's not so much a factor as it comes in tomorrow. An isolated sprinkle possible, but I didn't put it in. You'll see on my forecast icons, we'll have a little bit of fair weather cloud at times, but primarily a whole lot of sunshine. It's the next cold front behind that one that's going to be moving in as we get towards Thursday. See how the models wants to put a little sprinkle in here on Wednesday, which you're not going to see in my 5-day forecast. But Thursday, that's a different story. We'll have the humidity, the heat on Thursday that really climbs, and then that lifting mechanism of a cold front coming in. And with that, then we could definitely see some showers, but even some scattered thunderstorms bubbling up with that. At this point, not anticipating any severe storms, but of course, I'll keep you apprised of that situation. So off and on Thursday, something to be aware of earlier in the day and then again into the evening. Our winds are going to be shifting around more to a southwesterly flow, getting stronger too as we approach Thursday. That's going to help with the pushing the temperatures up. Overnight tonight, 13, tomorrow 28, feeling like we're into the low 30s. We'll get to 30 degrees on Thursday, feeling like close to 35, and then it's still close to seasonal for a couple of days before the warmth builds again as we go into next week, Meg.
All right, thanks so much for that, Colette. We have more news coming up after the break. Stay tuned. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is continuing his diplomatic push in the Middle East to bring an end to the Israel-Hamas war. The UN Security Council has approved a U.S.-backed ceasefire proposal. Hamas says it's seeking some amendments on the deal, but said it's ready to keep working to reach an agreement. Israeli officials say Hamas has rejected the deal after receiving the militant group's response through mediators. And the White House says it's evaluating the response from Hamas submitted to mediators in Qatar and Egypt. Julia Wong reports.
There was hope and expectation over the ceasefire proposal, which had been backed by the UN Security Council. The deal involved the release of hostages and exchange of Palestinian prisoners, a permanent end to hostilities, and a major reconstruction plan for Gaza. An Israeli government official says the plan would allow Israel to destroy Hamas, free hostages, and eliminate threats to Israel in the future. Today, at a Gaza humanitarian aid conference in Jordan, the UN Secretary General made an urgent plea for all parties to support the ceasefire plan so the war can come to an end.
The horror must stop. It's high time for a ceasefire, along with the unconditional release of hostages. I welcome the peace initiative recently outlined by President Biden and urge all parties to seize this opportunity and come to an agreement.
Also today, concern from the UN Human Rights Office over possible war crimes. On Saturday, Israeli forces rescued 4 hostages who had been held in Gaza since the October 7th attacks. Gaza's health ministry said that operation killed more than 270 people, and it injured close to 700 people. The UN is pointing to how the Israeli raid happened in a very crowded area. And it also says Hamas holding hostages in busy places puts the lives of both civilians and hostages at risk. It says the actions by both parties could be war crimes.
The conduct calls into question whether it be precaution, proportionality, and distinction. The scale of destruction, the scale of the people, the number killed and injured, seriously calls that into question, whether those principles have been applied.
Israeli tallies state roughly 120 hostages are still being held by Hamas. The UN says all should be released immediately. Julia Wong, CBC News, London.
Hunter Biden has been found guilty on all 3 felony charges at his federal gun trial in Wilmington, Delaware. Jurors found the U.S. president's son lied about his drug use on a form when purchasing a firearm 4 years ago. Carolyn Malone has the latest from Washington.
An unprecedented verdict on Tuesday, with the son of a sitting US president being found guilty. Hunter Biden guilty of 3 charges of illegally possessing and buying a weapon, while in his case he was a drug user. Now, he'd insisted all the time that he wasn't guilty, but it was very clear from the evidence given in the court case that he had been suffering from substance abuse for many years. He and his team claim he's been sober since 2019, but the gun purchase in question was at the end of 2018. In the trial itself, members of the Biden family were on the stand, including Naomi Biden, that's Hunter Biden's daughter. We heard from juror number 10 after the verdict, and he said that was one of the saddest moments for him because he's hearing from the daughter of a man that has a substance abuse problem. He said, though, ultimately, that even though it was sad to hear this kind of evidence, that it was very clear that Hunter Biden was guilty, and that was why the jury came to this unanimous decision, all 12 of them finding him guilty.
This case was about the illegal choices defendant made while in the throes of addiction, his choice to lie on a government form when he bought a gun, and the choice to then possess that gun. It was these choices and the combination of guns and drugs that made his conduct dangerous. No one in this country is above the law.
Now, Hunter Biden, of course, the son of the US President Joe Biden. He did release a statement, though, saying that he's not just president, he is a father, and the love of his family is incredibly important. Hunter Biden also expressing how important it is that he has the love of his family. We saw that as well from First Lady Jill Biden, who was there during the trial, and also as that verdict came in. Now, it could take up to 3 months for any kind of sentencing. There's the potential for Hunter Biden's lawyers to appeal, but we will likely get a sentence within 3 months' time. Caroline Malone for CBC News in Washington.
A minke whale in Nova Scotia is safe thanks to some quick thinking by whitewater rafters. They found the whale stranded on a sandbar in the river near the Bay of Fundy. Here's their story.
We saw something out on the beach, something big, and sure enough, it turned out to be this live whale in a small tidal pool, only about half a meter deep.
She probably came in from the bay, entered in when it was deep, got probably too far down the river. The river can rise and drop up to 2 inches a minute, and she was just cruising over top of sandbar. And then by the time she realized that it was just too shallow.
I can definitely tell by looking at it when it was there that it was not having a good day. For about half an hour, we were splashing water on this whale, waiting for the tide to come in. You could get close enough to it that you could touch it. Like it was in the sand, you could walk right up to it.
It was huge. It was bigger than the boat. And I literally have never seen anything like this in the 17 years I've been doing this. Happy feeling story, because as the water level comes up, it was able to get to deeper water. And then once we were heading back to home base, it started coming with us back out towards the bay.
I'm really glad that this story has a happy ending.
There's an old saying among pilots, perhaps a sinister one at that, and any landing you can walk away from is a good one. Well, here's a rather extreme case in point. Yahoo! That's extreme sports athlete Roland Braunbauer flinging himself off a giant Ferris wheel in Vienna. The paraglider says it took a year to calculate the wind conditions for the flight off the 65-meter tall wheel, and to prepare for flying in a city with a landing zone close to busy roads. And I think it's safe to say this is not something you should try at your local festival. Well, that's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. You can also download the CBC News app for stories that matter most to you. And don't forget to watch The National tonight at 9 on CBC News Network, 10 p.m. on the CBC News app. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.